coffee prices are getting as high as they have ever been. And we feel that in our coffee roastery. I'm sure you feel that at home. And so as one coffee snob to another, the last thing I want to do is reduce the quality of coffee that I'm drinking. So what can we do to try to save money as we're drinking our favorite coffees? This video today is going to talk about some tips to be able to help all of us maximize the value of what we're buying and keep great coffee in our cups. So today I want to answer a few questions of how am I spending money on coffee and where can I see ways to cut those costs? So step one in saving money with coffee is clearly if you're going to a coffee shop 5, 6, 7 days a week, you need to stop. You need to bring that home and brew at home. And that will not just save you 60, 70% on your coffee costs, but will also save you time and effort, because the fastest or slowest brewing method you do at home is still faster than asking them to do that at a coffee shop. But the next fix is, what do I do when I'm having coffee at home to try to maximize the dollar spent? And I guess the first question I have as you're thinking through that is, how do you pick your coffee? What do you drink? I guess I have in my own coffee at home what I would call my daily driver, which is the coffee that goes in the pot every single morning. First thing I wake up, that's the brew I smell, drink. And then there's another coffee in my collection, which is kind of the sip and relax coffees. On the days that aren't rushed to get out the door, where I want to enjoy every single sip of that coffee, I'm going to be willing to buy a little bit nicer coffee. And so do you think about coffee that way? Do you think about coffee in terms of, hey, what's my daily driver versus what is the coffee I can really cherish? Because as we do, you can kind of think through what makes those coffees different, and is there a price point difference? With Sagebrush, we actually think about that as we buy and price and sell coffees. And so we have coffees that are really, really good coffees, but they're pushing some of the envelope forward in terms of connecting farmers and helping producers grow in their abilities. And so sometimes their farms are so small that we end up combining different farms together to be able to create the lot. And those are what we would call our brown label coffees. You see a lot of the coffees on our website. Those will be like smallholder farms because they're pushing coffee forward, but they may not have the time-intensive processes in place to make these really unique cups. But man, they're great every single day. And then we spend a lot of time looking for some of the best single origin coffees where the producers are spending a lot of time with their process, whether it's washed or fermented or just all sorts of different processes that they put in place to try to maximize the flavor of those beans. That process takes time, takes effort, and takes money. And so thinking through, am I willing to, on the 5 days a week, sacrifice some of those unique flavors to be able to maximize the dollar and still get really good ethically sourced coffee? Or would I rather go with the premium coffees every single day? As I think through my coffee spending habits, and frankly, owning a coffee shop kind of gives me a cheat, but as I've thought through it over the years, I think there's just a lot of ways that we waste money on coffee, whether our coffees age out, whether our coffees, we just brew a lot more than we need, and so we're throwing away half a pots of coffee each day, or we're buying a small amount that frankly we could buy in larger bulk and be able to save money. And so as you think about what brewing equipment do you have in your home, what brewing equipment do you use regularly? Are you doing that well in a way that kind of maximizes the yields of what you have day to day? A good example of this is in our home, we may make a pot of coffee in the morning for Jenna and I, and we use a Mocha Master every single day. But there's some days where the timing of when we leave for the house probably is more conducive to each of us making our own pour over versus me throwing away half a pot of cold coffee and brewing a whole nother pot. And that happens more times than I'd like to admit. And so think through, what is your schedule each day and what brewing method maximizes that? That sounds like I'm nickel and diming it, but at the end of the day, if you're drinking coffee every single day, you've got 365 days a year, you can save 5-10% of your coffee. That's going to have an impact. And frankly, you can send that money upstream so that the producers that are being pinched on these prices are feeling the impact rather than us throwing away coffee. And that leads me to kind of the next thought of how do you buy? Like, we sell coffee in 12-ounce, 16-ounce, and 4-pound bags. And on sagebrushcoffee.com, we've chosen to pick those different volumes because we want to to help you be able to maximize your purchase for your normal brewing amount, I guess. And so, as I think through it, I think that most customers buy coffee every couple of weeks. I think you can get away with buying coffee once a month. And so if you back up and say, oh, this is how much coffee I'm using each month, then I'm going to buy a month's worth and try to maximize my dollar. That may be getting 4-pound bags on sagebrushcoffee.com and being able to save money because the price per pound for a 4-pound bag is significantly lower than that of a 12-ounce bag. And so think through and actually look at how much coffee do I use and try to maximize your dollar with that. That's going to help. But if you're doing that and you're having coffee sit on the counter for a month, we've tested it and we think that coffee sweet spots somewhere between like 4 or 5 days and 2 weeks is really where it's maximized flavor. But there's things you can do to preserve coffee really well to make that from 2 weeks to 4 weeks be almost unnoticeable. And so light is an enemy of coffee freshness. Keep it stored in a dark place. Keep it in a bag that protects from UV. You don't want light on your coffee. Oxygen is an enemy of coffee freshness. And so seal your bags, close your bags, get an airtight container. There's a lot of containers out there that can suck the air out of it so that you can do it. I have friends who actually partition out their daily coffee in different bags every single day so that they're only opening their coffee once, and then they have it stored to keep the oxygen out. That's going to help preserve that 30 days from now coffee quite a bit. And then humidity can be an enemy. So depending on where you live, we live in Arizona, it's not an enemy in Arizona, but if you live in a more humid place, try to keep it in something that's drier container. And that will help preserve your coffee. The last thing you want to do is keep a bag on the counter without closing the bag and just let it sit there in the sun and get light and air all over it. That's going to make your coffee taste bad or at least stale pretty quickly. And so do what you can to be conscious of trying to preserve that coffee so you can buy in bulk and enjoy it. When I say all these things, my real goal is I know and interact with producers and they're being pinched. Cost of fertilizer is going up, yields are going down, labor's going up. These producers that we love are being pinched. And so where can we go save money in other places so we make sure that they can continue the livelihood and we can continue to have the great coffee we want? Because that's the whole goal here. And so that's why when you hear me say, hey, what can we save money on? The last place I want to do is save money on the beans. I want to save money everywhere else first because I just have the relationships with the producers and don't want to see them fighting to be able to make ends meet. Before I move on from this topic, I want to go down a little rabbit trail about coffee gear. Early on in Sagebrush's history, it was really a means to be able to fund the coffee habit. In fact, I would just take our profits and buy more gear and bought different gear. And I really learned that there's a lot of cool things out there and the coffee gear does change the flavor profile of the coffee. I'm not saying that there aren't people innovating, but in our coffee shop, the biggest thing we've done to move the needle on improving our pour over coffees is a chopstick. We've taken a chopstick and just rotate it through the grounds of a V60 pour over, and that has a bigger impact on flavor than any other brewing method. And so there's ways to be creative without spending money to be able to maximize your coffee experience and really enjoy what you're doing. And so I would encourage you to not jump on the next wave of every new piece of gear that's out there. Just think through, what am I buying this gear for? And is it really maximizing my coffee experience? And if you want to become a gear collector, become a gear collector. That's fine. But that shouldn't be part of your general coffee budget and think, oh man, I'm spending so much money on coffee. You're actually spending money on this hobby of collecting gear and playing with it. That's great. I'm a gear collector. I get it. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, I collected a lot more gear than I have the last year or two because I've just learned that sometimes playing with the gear I have is just as fun as trying a new piece of equipment. And finally, thinking maybe a little out of the box here, but the most significant thing you can do in saving money on coffee is to become a home coffee roaster. Now that sounds intimidating. That's a big jump, but it really isn't. When I started roasting at home, I had a friend show me on his popcorn popper in his garage how he roasted coffee. And then I bought a Whirly Pop popcorn popper online and started roasting at home. And I would roast on my stove once a week for 11 minutes a week and roast all the coffee I needed for that week. So it's not as big of a hurdle as you think. And the obsession will grow, but when you think about cost of goods and what your home roasting will be, it's probably 30% of what you're paying for roasted coffee. So if you're willing to do that, go for it. My wife always talks about thinking about home roasted coffee versus like store-bought off-the-shelf coffee, which is probably about the same price point. Like if you go to the cheap off-the-shelf coffee at the store versus roasting at home, the difference is like baking cookies. Like you can buy cookies off the shelf at Safeway, but when you bake crappy cookies, the worst, cheapest cookies at home, it's still going to be better than Safeway. And so you can start going and sourcing great coffee and be able to roast that on your own, and it's going to be great. And that's actually why we started Sagebrush Unroasted. We have an unroasted, a green coffee website, and the whole point of that is to help home roasters. We don't sell it in big bulk. We sell it to home roasters because I started as a home roaster. I want to support that community. We buy some of the best coffees in the world, and we want to be able to bring that to home roasters. And so that's why we started, and I would encourage you. If you have questions about getting started or worried about getting over that hump, email us. We'd love to talk through helping people become home roasters because that's just my passion. I started there. So we're answering the question of how can I save money on coffee? And really, how can I not reduce the quality of coffee while coffee prices are going up? And we talked about leaving the coffee shop behind and doing things at home. We've talked about purchasing intentionally around what type of coffee you're going to drink today versus and what your coffee drinking experience is going to go with. We've talked about the gear and the whole like measure, sit, store, reproduce the best you can, maximize your coffee brewing experience when you have time, and then maximize your time and energy, or minimize your time and energy when you need to. And we talked about the amazing hobby of home roasting, which is just a unique passion of mine. And so I know I'm going to be talking more about that on this channel. And so as you think through all of those different things, the important part is pay attention to the details. Pay attention to what you're spending money on with coffee. And frankly, try to push more money towards the farms that you can, and by reducing waste and maximizing your coffee brewing experience. So this entire video came because about 15 years ago, I looked at what our spending on coffee budget was and said, oh, well, I can't keep doing that. And I stopped shopping at specialty coffee roasters and became a home roaster. There are lots of things you can do to look at that number and go, oh, I need to save money. And so hopefully this was helpful to you, gave you some ideas of where to save money. It's obviously not every idea that you can have, but hopefully it's a good list to get you started. And so if this is helpful to you, please like, subscribe, follow us. We're always trying to just improve your coffee brewing experience. And yeah, thanks for watching.